Greetings everyone, Erica here with your second Understanding by Design advice video. Assignment 2 is coming up very shortly. The submission date's very soon, so you should have started your curriculum design by now, and you should be through stage 1 where you've gone to your content standards, which come from the professional standards or the curriculum or syllabus in your field. You should have really thought about what the big goals are for your unit of work or your course or your series of lessons. And you should have come up with some essential questions, serious questions, questions that you can go back to, which might not have a right or wrong answer, but which should really guide the type of understanding as well as the content and the skills that you want your students to master. You then should have gone down and actually filled out your outcomes, what the learning outcomes will be. If you're working from a syllabus document, they'll often have these outcomes already stipulated. If you're not, then really think about what you want your students to come out with at the end of the course. Now, the next stage is really, stage 2 is around assessment and evidence. And what's interesting about this stage 2 is that there's 2 components. One is the performance task, and the performance task should be the task that the students undertake, which is a very authentic learning task, which is a task in which they need to apply their knowledge and skills, and maybe even transfer those knowledge and skills to a slightly new context. And it's a learning task in which students really have to apply what they've learned. So it has to be, a bit of a difficult learning task, a task to stretch the students. And you should think about designing it in terms of moving from lower to higher order thinking, but at least have students demonstrate middle order kind of thinking and hopefully higher order thinking on Bloom's taxonomy. And I've put a picture, a diagram of Bloom's taxonomy in the module for you to look at. Now, the performance task is the big task. It comes at the end. It's sort of a major summative assessment task. However, you can have other formative and summative assessment tasks along the way, which show in which students can show evidence of their learning. So students throughout the process really they have to think about, how am I going to show evidence of my learning? So they're very metacognitive, or thinking about their learning at all stages. So while the performance task comes at the end, it's a big, authentic task in which students really have to apply what they know. You can, of course, and you should, of course, collect other evidence of learning through formative assessment tasks, so questioning or giving feedback as you go, or having students undertake lower stakes assessment, or through smaller kind of summative assessment tasks. So at the end of everything they need to know, maybe it's a small quiz, maybe it's a worksheet that they've filled out in which you mark, or students or peers mark that. Perhaps it's a written reflection in which you give feedback. So there are summative in terms of the other evidence column. You can have some summative assessment evidence there and formative assessment evidence there. So, but really think about the division between those 2 types of assessment evidence. The evidence that the student has met the learning outcomes. There will be one big task at the end, but there'll be other smaller assessment tasks as we go, some of which will be graded and some of which won't. So once you've really thought about, how am I going to know if my students have learnt what I'd like them to learn, both through the performance task and through other evidence, then finally we go and think about, what are our learning activities? So obviously what you've got to think about with the learning activities is really thinking through a series of lessons. That's probably easier. Or if you're doing a course through a series of weeks, exactly what activities the students will undertake in order to meet the learning outcomes, and how those outcomes reflect to the essential question, and whether or not you need some formative or summative assessment tasks along the way in which students can demonstrate evidence of learning. And of course, at the very end of your unit of work, or towards the end of it, you need your performance task there. That needs to be explained. So you don't come to the learning activities planning exactly what students will do until the very end of Understanding by Design or Backward Design. So hopefully that's made it a little bit clearer. What would be good is if you could actually send me a draft and I can feed back on that for you and give you some pointers along the way. And the other really good thing to do is to go back. There's 3 documents in the actual unit. So we have our unit here, module 2. We have our 3 documents here, which you should be reading. And one of those documents, the book in particular, if you go to the book, you can see on page 8 of 28 that we have filled out or a completed Understanding by Design template, a model for you to look at to see how Wiggins and McTighe approach the particular historical question of pioneers and migrants in the United States. So it gives you a model. That said, the book is great. Page 8 of the book gives you a model for that, but of course the whole book's great. The white paper is excellent for a summary of the key issues with Understanding by Design, a very brief summary, and then of course you have some more detailed information in this other document. You do of course have to talk about pedagogy, and there's some readings on pedagogy and provide a reflection for that assignment. If you have any questions around the pedagogy, whether it's Dole's 4Rs or Ladwig's reading on pedagogy and how that fits with Wiggins and McTighe's framework, please put those on discussion board so we can talk about those. Go to those 3 documents which are in the module, check out the model that's provided, make sure you use the correct template, which is down the bottom here. There's Bloom's. I told you about Bloom's. The correct template, which is down here. There's one, you can choose either of those templates, and just remember that you really need to be succinct when you hand this assignment in. So here's the due date. It's not long away. Make sure if you want feedback to email me, and I'll be happy to provide that. Over and out for now, and good luck with the assignment.